Gather knowledge, wealth, and power. You can build a castle, attract followers, and even become a ruler of a land. All this lies in your future, and this is only the beginning. The horses are ready, dawn is breaking. Whither are we bound? Hi, I'm BECMI Berserker, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're continuing our adventure into the BECMI edition of Dungeons & Dragons by leaving the dungeon and venturing into the wilderness. We're going to dive into the expert rules, that beautiful box set with yet another Elmore dragon on the cover, just as impressive as the one on the previous basic set. First, I just want to give a shout out to ITS A TRAPP, who generously volunteered to fix my Berserker image and clean up all the nasty white clipping that it showed previously. I really appreciate it. Stuff like this makes me remember that there are a lot of good people out there willing to do each other a solid. So thank you again, ITS A TRAPP. You know who you are. So the Expert Rules was the second of a 5-box set edition of Dungeons & Dragons released between 1983 and 1986, widely referred to by the acronym BECMI. If you want more information about this edition, please click on the link appearing on the screen or in the description for my video covering this. The contents of the box was a single blue expert rulebook containing player and dungeon master information, plus the infamous X1 The Isle of Dread module, which presented the opportunity to explore much of the link between dungeon and wilderness play. The expert rules broadened the scope of the Dungeons & Dragons game that was presented in the previous basic rules. Where that set only covered player development up to level 3, the expert rules took characters up to level 14. In addition, it supported characters to gain followers, build strongholds, and seek adventure in the untamed wilderness, whilst also presenting the Dungeon Master with an introductory campaign world that would one day evolve to become Mystara. Further supported by additional monster descriptions and treasure lists, the expert rules laid the foundation for high-level play, whilst giving the game of Dungeons & Dragons a purpose beyond find the villain and slay them. So let's have a look at just how a character might develop through the expert rules and gain a stronghold and followers. Well, most classes may attract followers when they reach name level. But what is name level? Well, to explain that, we first need to go back a bit to character creation. In old school editions of Dungeons & Dragons, a character gained a title at each level. It was an indication of power through a way of ranking each level. As you can see in these examples, a fighter begins at first level, with the title of veteran, before becoming a warrior, swordmaster, then hero, etc. When 9th level is reached, this is referred to as the name level, as the top title, or rank has been achieved. When a fighter becomes a lord, they may attract followers. The same method is used for the other classes. A magic user starts as a medium, then becomes a seer, before working their way up to their name level of wizard. A cleric starts as an acolyte, before going up the ranks to patriarch. The rules do state quite clearly to change the gender of these titles, should the feminine be required. What this system illustrates is a clear objective to power. A point to it, if you like. Once name level is achieved, you may build a stronghold, and this will attract followers, giving your character influence and the ability to exercise more power, but in the geopolitical sense, rather than just from encounter to encounter. Although all races achieve name level at level 9, some may begin the construction of a stronghold earlier than this. In this table, I have shown when a class may build a stronghold and how many followers they may attract. Now, one question that comes up quite a bit with this is, why should I have to wait until a certain level if I can just afford it? Well, it comes down to reputation. If you don't have the reputation to deter an assault or attract followers, then your construction is at risk. I guess if I was DMing a player who is insisting on building a tower for their 5th level magic user, or enchanter using the title, then it would only be right to demonstrate how the world works. They'd either have to build in an unclaimed wilderness, very risky for one so vulnerable, or they'd have to build in claimed territory, where they'd be moved on quite easily. Although the name level marker is a bit abstract, it serves as a line in the sand in terms of how different actors may interpret the power of a character. In terms of demi-humans, you can see on this table that their communities are in the shape of clans, which offer numerous opportunities to exploit social dynamics. The number of followers may vary, but if a demi-human's stronghold is larger than the clan's existing one, they could see the family moving in. If you know BECMI, then you will be aware that there are two classes missing from this list, the Druid and the Mystic, which were introduced in the Companion and Master rules respectively. Here they are for completion purposes, together with their stronghold and follower information. All this detail can be found amalgamated in one volume in the Rules Cyclopedia. If you don't know what that is, again, I recommend you watch my introduction to BECMI video. So, now we have expanded the scope of D&D to include the potential for character development through spending the loot gained from adventures on carving a place for yourself in the world. I don't know about you, but that feels like the world just got bigger, and there's a corner of it just for me. Now, let's have a look at that world. Within the basic rules, we were introduced to the concept of the dungeon through the Alina and Bargel narrative and Short Misdemeanor adventure. We were told that these places were just a few hours from town. But what town? In what land? And who's in charge? These are questions the Expert Rules brilliantly preempts and answers. Contained within 17 pages of rules and advice on how to run a wilderness campaign are 3 important maps. Why are they important? Because they offer us our first glimpse at an official campaign world for our players to live and grow in. We are introduced to a land called the Grand Duchy of Karamikos, our homeland, which first appeared in the Moldvay Expert Edition released in 1980. But we are also offered a map of mysterious countries going beyond its borders for miles. And critically, we are introduced to our hometown of Threshold, a small lake town within the Grand Duchy which houses nearly 600 people. So now we have a base of operations, and the DM is even given geopolitical information about the duchy and its other cities, and its enemies within and without. The impact of this was to encourage players to interact with this information to progress a narrative, which then develops into a campaign. It all sounds familiar, but you have to understand that this was very different to what was being offered in the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons edition of the time, specifically the Dungeon Master's Guide. That book did offer quite a bit of information in terms of what a campaign was and what you might want to consider when developing one, but it did not offer you a world out of the box, so to speak. The Expert Rules literally did that. I mean, it came in a box. Seriously though, the mileage this offer gave the game in terms of developing creative minds of young DMs cannot be overstated. It offered a framework for DMs to homebrew beyond a set of instructions. In other words, here is an example to emulate and improve upon. Furthermore, the accompanying Isle of Dread module went into a bit more depth on those strange countries outside the duchy's border that I mentioned earlier. We were introduced to a majocracy called the Principalities of Glantry, Viking-like lands of Vestland, Ostland and Sodifjord Jarldoms. There was the Byzantine-type Empire of Thyatis, and the Arab-influenced Emirate of Ilarum. In addition, we had homelands for dwarves, elves and halflings, and a bunch of other lands I haven't even mentioned. Although the content was short, the imaginations were fired, and that's all a DM needs. Thousands of campaigns were played in what the Expert Rules called the known lands, before demand from the community to know more led to the development of the Mystara campaign setting, and a set of gazetteers to support this world. I will be visiting those in the future should I continue to receive support from my channel, so please stick around if you're here for the long haul. Suffice to say, in lieu of this campaign world being more developed, it was expanded here and there in adventure modules and even got turned into colour maps for the Rules Cyclopedia, but its roots are in the Expert Rules, and it even made an appearance in 2nd edition AD&D, but it remains for many a tragedy that Mystara wasn't carried forward into later editions. So let's move from the Blue Book for now and have a quick look at the X1, the Isle of Dread module that came in the box. This was a 32-page module designed to support play for characters level 3 to 7. It's a classic tropical stroke dinosaur island story with hidden treasures and mysteries within. However, its main purpose was to walk DMs through the rules for wilderness adventure, such as dealing with the environment and the possibility of getting lost. But it was also probably a group's first encounter with the concept of hexcrawl, the rules for which were detailed in the Expert book. The Isle of Dread came with a tear-off cardstock player's map that could support exploration and help the players navigate their way around. The influence of this module and hex crawl concept can be felt all the way up to the present, with 5e's release of Tomb of Annihilation, exploring the tropical, dinosaur-laden Chult Peninsula via a hex crawl player's map, dealing with the environment and the possibility of getting lost. Where the Tomb of Annihilation had Omu, the Isle of Dread had the Central Plateau and Taboo Island. Of course, Tomb of Annihilation was a more comprehensive product, but I do wonder how much the Isle of Dread was present in the writer's mind when drafting it. Putting this module and the rulebook together, the Expert Rules was a springboard into wilderness adventure and campaign design, whilst encouraging players to think beyond the pillaging of monster treasures and consider their place in the campaign world. What were their ambitions? How much land could they have? How far could they exert their influence? These questions and more whet the appetite for more information on this kind of play, resulting in the Dominion and War Machine rules that appeared in the subsequent companion rules, as well as information on demi-human relics. Of course, there were players who were not interested in owning any part of the world, and they were supported too through different class options such as Paladin, Avenger, and Druid. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That's for next time. I hope you've enjoyed this quick canter through the Expert Rules, and perhaps you've been encouraged to give it a try. I really hope so. The more I can convince newer players to try old school versions of D&D, the better. BECMI still has so much to offer, and I can't recommend it enough. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel, as it really helps, and it encourages me to push on with these videos. I'm BECMI Berserker, and I hope to see you back here when I discuss the next box set, the Companion Rules.